May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. Now, in the past week, I have had shredded foam fall on me from the ceiling as a substitute for snow. I have been served coffee in a red holiday-themed cup, have been assaulted by carols and jingle bells in every store I've entered, and been wished happy holidays multiple times. And folks, I am forced to conclude that there is a war going on here. And it's not subtle. It is a war on Advent. Advent, this first Sunday of which you have now found yourself attending, the beginning of our church year, our season of waiting, of preparation, waiting for the advent of Christ, which, as you gathered from our gospel already, is not necessarily the baby Jesus that already happened, but waiting for the second coming of Christ. They will see the Son of Man coming in power and great glory, says Jesus. And I'm trying to come up with a catchphrase for our cause here in this room. Maybe keep the apocalypse in Advent. Make Advent great again. We could have purple hats. But even the weather here is conspiring against us. Pleasant sunshine, mid-60s. Keep the frigid darkness in Advent? I don't know. Clearly there are principalities and powers beyond mortal control taking part in this war. Now, maybe you don't know about Advent. That when you walked in this door today, maybe you were expecting a cozy story of a visiting angel or shepherds tending their flocks by night, and you have realized your disappointment already. The lectionary is certainly Team Advent, but it doesn't mean that this war doesn't creep into even the most liturgically proper of places. Now, somewhere along the line, the Advent wreath has been appropriated. You know, the 4 candles, ours are all nice purple, some have a pink one in there, symbolizing the 4 weeks of Advent. Now, somewhere along the line, someone said, here's what they stand for: hope, love, joy, and peace. Have you heard this? It's a bit Catholic. Also Methodists do this. United Church of Christ. We're good Episcopalians, good Anglicans, and don't take a particular stand, I guess. But this is a departure, this somewhat common knowledge, from what tradition gives us from the medieval church, where the 4 candles stood for the 4 last things that one would encounter in life: death, judgment, heaven, and hell. It's a tone shift. And while I don't have anything per se against hope, joy, love, and peace, it does set my teeth on edge to see these virtues bandied about in sugar-coated frosting, splashed in frilly fonts on freshly unwrapped Christmas trinkets placed upon crowded shelves between the crystal reindeer and the pine cone potpourri. What do these words mean? I want to know what these virtues mean in light of the season of the year where stress levels skyrocket, the season of finals, of grading, of deadlines, where everything is colored by this gray tint of seasonal affective disorder, where even the well-adjusted feel that they're just not as happy as they ought to be. Now, I read an article reflecting on World Mental Health Day and suicide prevention and perusing the tweets on it in this article, which often, as you may have well seen, urge people to take care of themselves, to seek help, to confide in a friend, to keep active. And one such tweet is a picture of an artsy, craftsy cutout of a bright yellow circle behind dull green paper designed to look like a cheerful sun. Printed on the sun are the words, "Everything will be so good, so soon. Just hang in there and don't worry about it too much." All of us have probably seen some variation of these words at some point, many points in our lives, and probably found at least a little bit of momentary relief in them. But looking through the other tweets about World Mental Health Day reveals a different side of the issue. People talk about the times they did try to seek help and were left to languish on waiting lists for therapy. They talk about the cuts to their local services if they're from somewhere with universal health care, or the insurance policies that wouldn't cover them if they're in the United States. They talk about homelessness and job insecurity and insecure housing and jobs that leave them exhausted. They talk about loneliness. These are deep material and societal issues that all of us are touched by to at least some degree. We know it when we see people begging in the streets, when we read yet another report that tells us our planet is dying, when we try to figure out why we feel sad and afraid and put it down to an off day, trying not to think about just how many off days we seem to have. We turn to our TVs, to our meditation apps, and hope we can paper over the cracks. We are in darkness, and when we cry out for light, we are handed a scented candle. Are the words hope, joy, peace, and love a mantra thrown out in desperation to the very darkest time of year? A wallpaper over a crumbling edifice? O come, Emmanuel, we will sing. And what will you find in us when you arrive? What will you find in me? Because we know, too, of the darkness in us, don't we? That it's not just in the season or in the world. In the words of Fleming Rutledge, the line of good and evil is found inside every person. But proclaiming love and finding no real examples of this being tested beyond a flimsy tolerance of people you dislike, and maybe a charity check written here or there. Hope for this or that thing, some achievement to post on the wall, something manageable. For hope in something greater than yourself can devastate in its disappointment. Joy being most elusive, traded quickly for a consumeristic experience just as quickly discarded, or set up for in a photo album to look back upon and to try to paste the word joy over any other feelings you might have had. Pretending to be peaceful, it is the annoyances of a coworker or some perceived slight from a should-be friend that rules your warring mind. And when we are honest, we find little peace in ourselves. When was the last time you could sit and wait, with no need to fill the void opened up, the almost unbearable anxiety that comes with empty space? Jesus talks about that anxiety in our gospel today. There will be distress, he says, using a word that means a constriction around the heart. It's physical sensation. You'll feel this. People wait, jittery with nerves, fainting when it becomes too much. Foreboding will fill the news. You'll be tempted with distraction, he says, with numbing agents, anesthetizing against the feeling. Drunkenness and despair, easier options. This second coming, this Advent that's being described, all starts to sound a little more familiar, a little more like the world we live in. Wait, Jesus says, for the Son of Man is coming. He says our waiting must look differently than the world's way. The anxious pacing, the clenched jaw, the nervous activity, the tightened heart. Jesus says when you feel this, lift up your heads, stand up straight, keep your heart open, stay alert, he says. When you feel this way, God is appearing. And the great mystery is that God's appearing, from what we can tell, can be easily missed. Consider the world around you as you wait. the sun in its rising and setting, the phases of the moon, the fig trees, the branches, the leaves in their falling. Consider the birds. When God comes to visit you, it might not be with easy mantras. Faith doesn't seem to work like that, at least not for me. Brene Brown says that she always expected faith to be like an epidural, something that was there to numb the pain that life brings. But she discovered that faith was more like a midwife, someone saying, "This is going to hurt. Now breathe. Keep your head up. Life is coming into the world. Life is coming into the world through you. Breathe."